Welcome to Making It with Terry Wollman, the show that explores the secrets, successes, and strategies for making it in the music biz. And now, here's your host, Terry Wollman.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to Making It, presented to you by Fireside. I'm your host, Terry Wollman, and my guest today is musician David Garfield. I appreciate you joining us every week, and I'd like to share my intention that inspires this podcast. Time passes quickly, and I've learned that we should do what's in our hearts and do it well without apologies or excuses. I encourage you to create your life and art in your own unique way and express your artistry with joy and with abandon. Be willing to work uncompromisingly for what you believe in. Success will have a better chance of finding you when you live your life with integrity, focus, and passion. Be selfish with your discipline and selfless in your performance. And don't forget to have fun along the way. If you're joining us in our live audience today, we'll be inviting questions and comments during the second half of our show. So make it count. And we really want you to be included in this conversation, so don't be shy. Simply request an invite to speak, and my moderator, Dr. Lisa, will bring you on stage to join the conversation. Hi, Dr. Lisa. You with us?
I am. Good afternoon. I was going to say good morning, but it's even afternoon where I am. So hello.
Hello. What country are you in right now, or city?
I am in the United States, wise guy.
Okay. You never know.
You're
you
right.
never know. So, by the way, if you see our friend Alan in the audience, you're welcome to invite him into the conversation once we get started.
Awesome. Thank you.
Because he's a close friend and peer of both of ours. So let me tell everybody let me tell you, our audience, who our guest is today, and let me tell you about him. David Garfield has been driven by a single mission statement since moving from his hometown of St. Louis to Los Angeles as a teenager in the early 70s. I make music. Fully living up to this vision and in more expansive ways over the past few decades, this multi-talented keyboardist and composer has established himself as an eclectic force of musical nature. At any given point during his career, and often at the same time, he has been a renowned songwriter, producer, bandleader, arranger, recording artist, record label owner, session and touring musician, musical director, and composer for various global organizations. His latest CD, which is wonderful, I've been listening to it, which features an incredible lineup of players and guest artists, is called Stretchin Outside The Box. David Garfield, welcome to Making It.
Hello.
Hey, David.
Great
How
to
are
be
you?
here. I'm doing well today. It's a good day here in sunny Van Nuys, California.
Yes, sir. By the way, belated happy birthday. You had a birthday, and if anybody's in the audience, a round of applause for David, making it through another year and not wasting any part of your life.
Thank you, Terry. You're right behind me, I think.
Yes, I am.
It's a few weeks behind me.
Yep.
And I feel very blessed to have, I was with a friend of mine today who's visiting from Canada, who was in LA in the music scene when I came out in the 70s, who was one of my mentors. And we're just talking about how blessed we were to be at this era of the music, the 70s, 80s, 90s, 2000. I think it's been a unique time in the music world.
We are fortunate, and because it doesn't exist, it's like studio work isn't what it was when we first moved out here to do it, to work with the best musicians in the world, here, there, of course, New York, and there are other cities, but this is a mecca for talent. And you and I both moved to, it really is. It's kind of an epicenter for pop music and all kinds of music. And it's so interesting to me, David, because again, you had this mission statement, like this sort of this mantra or goal that you moved out here with. Did you know that when you were really young? Were you a prodigy musician, or were you like some of our artists on the show who are very good, but just got there through hard work and discipline?
I'm glad you asked. It's quite an interesting story. I grew up, in the Midwest and the East Coast, and we had a grand piano in the house, and my older sister was a pianist, a wonderful classical pianist. everybody played some music. We loved records. We had the hi-fi. We'd listen to, it was a musical environment. I just took to it. It fed me,
Hmm.
and it made me smile and feel good. It was like a world to escape to. I remember sitting at the piano and playing, and like it was like an escape to another world. So I never consciously thought I'm going to be a musician, but I just gravitated to music all the time, all the time. And then eventually, when I got into high school and I was involved in music programs and starting bands and things, that's all I could think about. So it was like a natural um, transaction just to go
Hmm.
forward. Trajectory is the word.
Were
But
you good
here's
in
the thing.
school? Were you a good student, or were
Not
you
at
just
all.
okay?
Not at all. It's funny now. I'm very interested in world history from traveling the world, but I
Sure.
would go into my 10th grade history class, and the teacher, Mr. Baker, would go Byzantium, and I would go. I just go out. That was it. It's the only thing I remember from the whole class. But what I was going to say is, what's interesting is I got out to California, and I did have this goal. I had a real goal was to meet other young upcoming musicians my age who wanted to play progressive music. At that time, there was Weather Report, there was the Return to Forever, Headhunters. They call it fusion, but at that time, 1974, I wanted to meet other people and create a band. I really did. I had an idea, an instrumental band. I wanted to call it Charisma. I wanted
Mm.
to feature everybody and I wanted it to be appealing. I wanted it to be instrumental jazz, but appealing to the normal person. But years later, I was listening to some tapes on the principles of success and motivation, and I heard the thing about mission statement.
Hmm.
So at that time, I wrote a mission statement, and the long version is, and I thought about I create music, arrange music, rehearse music, gather the musicians, record the music, and perform the music. And so I simmered that down to just we make music. It's the short version of it. But
Right.
if you think about it, compose it, rehearse it, arrange it, record it, perform it,
Perform it. Right.
and
And
nowadays promote it.
promote it and release it because you have Creechy Records, your record label, which
Yeah,
you've
and
been doing
that
for a long time.
and that was a fluke. I never ever wanted to be in the business of records. And you know, you don't know what this is like. Well, you do, but most people don't know what this is like. Once you get into manufacturing records, all of a sudden, the first time I manufactured records, I started dealing with people that said, "Whoa, what are the terms? Net 30? And where you're shipping?" It's like you're in the shoe
Right.
business.
Right. Right.
Oh my
Sales.
God.
Hmm.
I didn't know how to deal with that aspect, the printing, the proofs, but the thing is I learned, I adapted, but we put out our first release. We actually manufactured our first record here in 1995. And that's when we became an actual record company.
Right.
CDs in the garage, full of CDs.
Sure.
You know,
Um, by the way, and Alan, I'm going to have you join the conversation moment because I see that you're on stage because you're a part of this early story. And David, you're holding up the CDs, which is great, which we'll be talking more about in
lots of
detail.
CDs.
Yeah, it really is. But you started out as a drummer, right? And
Mm-hmm.
but you switched to piano when you tell the story.
Okay, well, here's the story: is I originally started with piano lessons, and I was
Yes.
doing quite well. And to join the orchestra, you had to pick an instrument, and they didn't have piano, so I picked drums, which was in the percussion family. And then eventually, I stopped taking piano lessons. It's kind of a sad story because we were in the East Coast.
Hmm.
I had a teacher. I think he was a burnout from New York who couldn't make it on the classical circuit and didn't like teaching little boys. And I was so into the music, and he would get mad at me for bouncing, so I quit piano.
Mm.
Quit piano in
Wow.
fifth grade. And then I just was strictly rock drummer.
Right.
And I pursued that all through high school, but I always knew how to play some piano. I had good ears and I played the piano, and it's like a second instrument. Well, I could never get work in St. Louis where we were living as a drummer. I kept trying
Hmm.
to get jobs with the bands, and they kept asking to borrow my drums for this other guy to play them who didn't have drums. And I got tired of that.
Sure.
They said, well, look, if you had a Fender Rhodes piano, you could start working with us tomorrow night. And that's how it started.
And right, and you've kept working. That
Ever
hasn't
since. It was
it
the
pretty much
beginning
it
of my
hasn't
career.
I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, because many of our careers go up and down, and certainly yours has as well. But you've pretty much never stopped working, right? You've
Never
always,
stopped.
right,
Yeah. Except with COVID. COVID
for
has
sure.
slowed us down, but I've actually been busier than ever. But it's not the traditional getting called. It used to be that you get a phone call, you'd mark it in your book, you get some directions,
Right.
you get, it was another time. We
Yes.
didn't have GPS,
We had a
you
Thomas
know,
guide.
drove
So
all over the city playing gigs in the 70s and the 80s.
absolutely. Absolutely. And working with some of the world's greatest musicians who we are all still friends with. Um, one of those people who was pivotal in both of our arcs of our music careers and creating music is our friend Alan Hirschberg, who engineered both of our first records. I believe many of your early records, certainly mine as well. Uh, Alan, hi. Why don't you unmute yourself and just join the conversation for a moment, because it's really nice to see you here.
Hey Terry, hey David, how's it going?
Good,
Greetings
good,
from
very good.
greetings from the 405.
There you are. Your second office.
Yeah,
The
so
Californians. You take
yes,
the
absolutely.
405 to the 101 to the 23 to the 14.
So just so people know, Alan is a world-class recording engineer and mixing engineer, who has also gotten into the tech world. But you just work with David and some of your other musician friends and peers over the weekend, uh, doing one of your live Zoom shows. Is that correct, David and Alan?
Yeah.
So, Alan,
yep.
what's your because you've been friends with David for a really long time. Can you just share like a little anecdote or something personal or just your perspective about David and what it is that adds to his success as a musician and artist and person?
Wow, that's a pretty broad question, actually. I mean, the two things that come to mind right off the bat is that David has an extremely big heart,
Mm,
and he really does. He really cares a great deal about his friends and his family, and I think that expresses itself in the music that he creates.
hmm
And I don't know. We had an interesting. I had to ask him. I had been working with all these great musicians, and listening to David is, amongst other things, a remarkable soloist. And
Yes.
I was trying to understand what the thought process was, because I'm an engineer. I'm a musician, and that goes behind that, and realized that all he's doing is he's speaking through his hands.
Mm,
That it's a language. I thought you had to, in your head, you had to map all this out, and I didn't see how that would work. And he just explained it to me that he has a direction that he wants to go, but then it's just something he has to say. And I think that really boils down to me to the purity of the music and the music that he definitely creates.
that's a really beautifully said, Alan, and so people understand, non-musicians, that is something that takes years to accomplish. To be able to express yourself freely. David, correct me if I'm wrong, or were you always just able to express anything
Well, no,
that you thought and heard and imagined?
well, it started out with just basic blues scale. When
Right.
I learned the blues scale on the piano when I was, 13 or 15, whatever, play like, just start working, playing through that, and then eventually started finding other notes, and added the ninth and the 11th, and then eventually got turned on to the mode concept, and then pentatonics, and then diminished and whole tones, and then it's just a vocabulary.
hmm
And I was very fortunate that in the high school I was able to get in some of the great educational programs. I went to the Stan Kenton camp in
Mm.
Springfield, Missouri, where I saw Pat Metheny, who was a few years older, jamming in the lobby. He was just a kid, but he was sounding great. I go, "Who is that?" He goes, "This guy from Kansas City." And then, I found out later that both David Sanborn, who was from St. Louis like me, and the Bruckers all went to a Kenton clinic in Kenton Camp in Indiana one summer. Things like that really helped me develop a repertoire so that I could improvise.
Right.
Not everybody can improvise. And I teach people, I work with people of all instruments, guitar players, all different, about tools of how to improvise. And one of the things I'll share in case anybody here is interested, I was working with my friend Larry Klein, as a saxophone player,
Mm-hmm.
just recently, about taking a scale and then breaking it up and going like the first and then the fourth, the second and the fifth, and then just breaking it down into different intervals. With quite a lot you can do with 7 notes.
Right, especially if you're thinking of them intervallically and not just as a scale.
Exactly.
That makes sense.
Yeah. And so,
Yeah.
yeah, thank you, Alan, for that.
Alan,
It's
yeah, absolutely. And one of the things, Alan, I really thank you for is something that you pointed out about David that is even more important than the talent, the natural talent, gift, and the years of fantastic training that you've had and the discipline. It's your heart. I think, that's a really important aspect of being you and being successful. What's your take on that? Because I know some of that is just who you are. We're both Libras, so we have some of that together, but there's a choice involved in that. That's a conscious thing
well,
about you.
It's interesting. I'm tying this into your show, Making It, because it's worked against me in some ways.
Having
people
heart?
people have
Okay.
always said that I wear my feelings on my sleeves. And it's an interesting thing that we're talking about, about making it in the business of music, especially we're here in Los Angeles and we've been here for decades. And what you find out is that there is a fair amount of maneuvering and politicking and, for people to want to go into the gigs and so forth. Now, back to me, like you say, like the music that I loved was all full heart.
Yes.
I loved Art Blakey and the Jazz Messengers. I loved Lee Morgan. I loved Horace Silver. I mean, I loved all kinds of music. Chick Corea, The Light as a Feather, the early Return to Forever records were some of the stuff that I was groomed on, and early Weather Report and CTI records were a big deal for me because CTI was a company in '70s that did more modern jazz, and they used electric instruments and guitars and congas, which were not typical traditional jazz, big band jazz. You go back to the clarinets and the trombones, but you get to the jazz with conga drums and so little soul in there, and that was what I came up on. So heart was what my music was all about, and I met people with heart. I was attracted to them. And I came up in that environment. I'll just say a couple of things. I learned in St. Louis with older jazz musicians in the African American community, and there was very segregated. You go south and it's white, you go north and it's black.
Right.
And I was in North St. Louis playing and hanging out with these musicians, and they had big hearts. So I didn't know how to politic, and I didn't know how to be an operator. So it's quite interesting coming to LA and then actually having some success without I really never tried to force it or backstab it, but I hear stories of stuff that goes on that's frightening to me, and I never knew it,
Right. Yeah. Stepping on other people there's a, it's so interesting in our community, and community meaning internationally, the music community, the tribe, because there are a lot of people who are very kind and care deeply about each other and lift each other. And then there's a very mercenary aspect. And it depends on who you are and how you choose to go through your life. And we know both. And it's interesting because both are successful.
And I think that there's more of the better of the first kind. I think as you explain that, I think most of the people that I know are from the heart. You've had Al Schmidt on here. He had a huge heart. Thinking of guys like Freddie Washington, Jim Keltner, and then some of the people have learned how to have to protect themselves, and I have to give them that credit that they've learned to be calculated to protect themselves, and it's smart. It's smart.
Right.
But I think heart is it's very interesting that Alan brought this into this conversation, because I think heart is the most important thing. But I also think for people that are in this podcast that want to learn how to make it, that you have to learn not to wear everything on your shirt sleeves. You have to keep a few things close to the vest, because I think people sometimes don't want to hear immediately criticisms or harsh criticisms of their music or their arrangements. Like, oh, that tempo sucks, man. You got to be like, oh man, can we just try it a little slower?
Yeah, might live better. Right. There's being a diplomat. Well, but that because we're both music directors and producers as well, and that's a special skill in just making sure that everybody feels heard. Yeah, I mean, interesting choice of words since we're in music, but but really having people feel safe.
I have a hard time with that, because I'm in the studio, and part of my job as a producer is to make this happen with the money that I have.
Oh, you're taskmaster. Yeah.
And I'm telling you right now, if somebody wants to tell me why they want to change the song, and you know what? I don't have time to listen to let you feel heard.
Right.
So shut the F up.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, one of the things that I'm sure we both learned around the same time earlier in our careers as music directors is that we don't get to be everybody's friend. Not while we're working.
Yes. Have you had any bad experiences as a music director with people taking it poorly, what you say?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's interesting. I'll tell you 3 different quick stories. When I joined Natalie Cole, Bob Krogstad was the musical director. He was a wonderful orchestral guy who did a lot of really big symphonic stuff, and he was so easy to work with. It's made it so comfortable. Then there was another person that came in. I'm not going to mention the name because I didn't like them.
Right.
They were very confrontational, and they really had personality clashes with everybody. But one night after a show, they called me into their room and just kind of wanted to berate me for something. And I thought, how stupid is this? But what I have learned myself, and this is actually before that happened as the musical director, especially with George Benson, I've learned something. When the show's over, something went wrong, you make a note of it and you bring it up at sound check the next day.
Right. Yes.
And you don't say this went wrong. You say, let's look at the ending to Love Ballad.
Mm-hmm.
And you don't say, because last night the ending sucked and it was your fault. But see, we get in the van and somebody would say something about the show negative, and it would get bitter, and there'd be like a fight, and you're driving and it's like bad. So at least I learned that one thing: hold it for the next day.
That's an invaluable lesson. Absolutely. Let me ask you something, David, because we were talking about your early training and life, and I know also as an adult when you were professional, you had the good fortune of studying piano with Terry Trotter, which I'm curious about. I'll just ask you that right now, and then I'll get to my other question. What was the biggest takeaway from being friends with Terry, who's a magnificent pianist, but also learning from him? What did you learn besides what scale to use?
Oh, Terry, so much.
Yeah.
The one of the things I learned for 2 of the things that I really learned from Terry. Well, let me give you the preface. So I came out to LA without ever having any real piano lessons in my since I was a kid, and I quit.
Okay, but then I need to jump in then. I have to, because didn't you join Freddie Hubbard's band in 1976 when you were 19?
I did, but I didn't have any lessons till I left Freddie.
Wow.
Yeah, that's what happened. I had whatever I learned as the 2nd, 3rd, 4th grade is beginning piano. Whatever I learned then stayed with me. But when I switched from drums to piano and became professional, I just pounded it out. I was an R&B jazz guy, funky and rhythmic, and I didn't have real classical chops, and I didn't really read. So I got with Freddie in 76 and so Carlos Vega, who was one of my big inspirations and close friends, was the drummer with me with Freddie at the end, and he left, and he was always studying with Ralph Humphrey. He was always studying, And I said, you know what, I'm going to try to study like you. So that's when I found Terry, and I
Hmm.
started with him then. But what Terry taught me was on classical pieces, how to bring out counter voices. You
Yeah.
know, like
Hmm.
there's, I mean, that was, oh, he taught me a lot. He also taught me, I'd say, how do you do your voicings? And he would never show me a voicing. He would just grab notes from the scale and make these clusters. Now, he's a wonderful pianist. But he worked with me on my technique
Hmm.
and my reading. And when we became friends, and I've had the pleasure of having him record, he's even on the new record.
Yeah.
We do a version of John Coltrane's My Favorite Things, and Terry plays the piano on the major section, and I play the piano on the minor section.
How fantastic. Mm.
Yeah.
That's one thing that you do a lot of. You're pretty fearless about having three bass players on the same track, or multiple drummers, and of course multiple guitar players and keyboard players. But you really enjoy that in your production, and you make it work. There's still clarity to it. It doesn't get confusing.
You know what's so interesting is that we came up in an era where we overdubbed, or we had more than one player. Like in the Wrecking Crew, they'd have three guitar players and three keyboard players and stuff. And we always had that. Like, you'd have different guitar, like especially with, you'd have the rhythm, and then you'd have the power chords and this. And so what I've noticed, and there's a guy named Thundercat,
Hmm.
who is Ronald Bruner's brother. I'm not sure what his first name is. I forgot, but he goes by Thundercat, and he's a
Hmm.
bass player. And I listened to his stuff, and what's so interesting is there's so much space in it. They've gotten away from all the overdubs that I'm so attached to,
Right.
and you can hear things breathe. But there is a beauty to the overdubs, like on these records. Like, you mentioned several guitar players, several. Like I worked with another keyboard player, a guy that I love, Michael Finnegan, who just passed away.
Yeah.
Wonderful organ player. So he played the organ,
And
and I
singer.
played the piano. Oh, sang great.
Sh-
But there's a thing about the organ and piano together; they work great.
Yeah.
But each one plays less. But the point is that, yeah, I love working with other keyboard players. Joe Sample, who I know
Yeah.
you were a friend of Joe's.
Yeah.
Terry Trotter, David
Mhm.
Page. Um, I got to play with Leon Russell once.
Oh, that must have
You
been
know,
really fun and life
yeah,
changing. Yeah.
yeah.
You just mentioned our friend Mike Finnegan, who we just lost, recently to cancer. And, um, it leads me to a question about growing older because uh, can I disclose how old or how old we're both
Sure.
turning? So you just turned 65 and I'm turning 65 tomorrow. So
Hmm.
we share that part, we're in the same chapter of our lives. And
Yeah.
I want to read two quotes of yours and then just talk about growing older right now. And one of them is is this past decade has been particularly fruitful and creatively gratifying, which is so positive. And I love hearing that. And I know it's true because you're prolific in your writing and producing and releasing of music. But you also say, I feel as though I'm always learning from the artists and musicians I work with, not simply on a musical level, but also benefiting from their wealth of stories and life and career experiences. These two quotes lead me to ask you this question and, of course, to expound on that. But the question, David, is how is growing older and losing friends who you love and who have informed or influenced your touring career and life, how's it all playing out for you right now? Because we're at a time. I mean, we've experienced, and our listeners, I can't imagine that there's nobody in this audience that hasn't experienced the loss of someone that they love at an early age and through our lives. But as we get into our mid 60s, it's right on time.
Yeah.
So, what's your feelings on all that? Where are you at with all this?
Well, here's the thing. I always was the youngest in the band. I was
Hmm.
always the youngest guy on the tour in the band. And so it's interesting as time flies and you get older, and okay, so you turn 65. I started touring in 1976. They didn't even have metal detectors when we started touring. I remember the
Oh,
first day we went to the airport and they put up the metal detector.
hmm
Um, and the thing is that you forget sometimes that you're getting older. I think my eyes started to go on me when I hit 40.
hmm
I used to not need glasses, and then eventually a tooth has to be replaced and blah blah blah. But it is, I think, touring and being a musician in our era, when I used to have a van, I used to carry the Fender Rhodes,
Yeah.
racks, big speakers. It's kind of, in a lot of ways, it's a young man's or young woman's, you know, world. I mean, we're talking about that today with my friend who's down here from Canada. Like, I don't really want to go on a bus tour, you
hmm
know. Um, so where it's at with me is I feel very fortunate that I got out there in the 80s with George Benson and the 90s with Boz Scaggs. And then I was in a band with Steve Lukather from Toto and Simon Phillips, John Pena, called Los Lobotomies. We did a whole year of touring as a four-piece group. It was really fun. And we're getting signing autographs and all the fans following us around Europe. But, I'm glad to have done all that. But as I get older, I think I'm very fortunate that somehow I had the inspiration, I don't know, came into me to do this outside the box project, because it's weird how it came about. I was working with George Benson. I was in the studio with Smokey Robinson a bit, and I was writing with Smokey. We actually wrote one song for George that he recorded.
And just
And,
so people know, I want to interrupt in case they don't know, you were George Benson's music director, piano player for many years.
yeah, for like over 30 years on and
hmm
off. But, the thing about the project was, I just had this inkling, like, I want to get in the studio and record with George. I want to get Smokey to record with me. I want to get David Sanborn in the studio. I want to get Marcus Miller in. I would love to get Steve Gadd. Maybe I can get Jim Keltner and Marcus Miller together. I started getting all these ideas. Because I'd love to go into Capitol Studios again. It's a classic place. Who knows if it's going to be around in 20 years?
Yeah.
And really, I mean, this is what I had this whole revelation, like, go in the studio, go in the Capitol, go in the Village. These are some of the best studios in LA. Go in with the great engineers. I had Al Schmidt and Steve Sykes, Mick Guzowski.
hmm
Go in there and record with the greatest cats that you know. And I got Jim Keltner in there, Steve Jordan, who just joined the Rolling Stones. I
Right.
had, and as it went on, it just became a thing. I had some of my Reyes family friends. Next thing you know, half the Zach Brown band was on the record. We had Bill Champlin and Jason Sheff and the Toto guy. I mean, the
hmm
Chicago guys.
Chicago. hmm
So it's just, what I'm saying is that it started with one little idea, and it turned into this thing, which we just kind of finished 6 years, 6 albums. And I feel like, as an older person, I can rest assured that this music will live on. I really believe that long after I'm gone, this music will live on.
I don't doubt it. And it is epic. And one of the things that's, I have so many questions for you, but one of the things that's really interesting to me is that you have figured out, as an independent artist with your own label, how to make that happen financially. That now a lot of that is relationships.
Yeah.
They're friendships, and when you create an opportunity or uh, a space for something to happen like that collaboratively, people want to be a part of it because they know it's going to be
Oh,
great.
yeah.
They
Well,
absolutely know it's going
this is how it works. You start with you start with $2 million, and you end up with $1 million.
to. Right. How do you make $1 million in music or in jazz? Right. Start with two.
It used to
Right.
be in jazz. Now it's in music.
Now it's in music. Right. We've had
Yeah.
to adapt that the joke. One of the things there's two things that are really interesting to me. One is that these albums, the Outside the Box projects, including the new one, Stretchin Outside the Box, there's not just like 10 songs. There's 24, 25 songs that
Yeah.
you release at
Yeah.
this. So it's an epic. These are epic projects, uh, and it holds together. I mean, it all works musically, but that's a lot of music to put out as one collection. When from a business point of view, when some people have just put singles out these days, you're holding them up, and I'm glad that you're doing that. And Dr. Lisa, if you don't mind, David, can you tell everybody the website so we can put that up on the crawl and let everybody know where they can find your music?
Just go to www.davidgarfield.com or go to Amazon or Spotify or Apple Music. Just put David Garfield in there. Yeah.
And speaking of Spotify, that's the second part of what I wanted to bring attention to and mention to. You're just shy of 67,000 monthly followers on your Spotify channel. First of all, big respect.
Oh,
it's
great.
It's wonderful that you have that. When did you first realize the value of streaming, and what's been your approach to building your following and creating new forms of income with your music catalog? Because you're ahead of the curve, basically in our community, and with our peers. Not everybody has that many followers, and how have you done that? And congratulations.
I didn't know I had that.
I just looked.
What I've been tracking is the total streams. Like we're approaching 7 million total streams lifetime for the catalog, which
great
outside of Spotify. But you need 10 million streams to really get what you need. But here's the point: a couple things, but I need to back up, and I just quickly finish the last question you were asking about. I made the joke about start with 2 million.
Yeah.
The truth is, we've spent more money on the record than we've made at this point. Mm-hmm. But that's a beautiful thing, because I want to leave this beautiful music for the planet to enjoy. It's not even about getting into the breaking out of the red. But I did do some things you mentioned. So I had relationships. So several people I bartered with. Several people I swapped sessions with. Rick Braun played on one of my songs. I went and played on a Dave Koz record for him. It was a complete swap,
Right.
And then on some of the stuff with some of my buddies like Lenny Castro and other people, you give me a super low rate. I pay them cash,
Mm-hmm.
Don't tell anybody. And then, they get,
listening.
and there's just different things.
Right.
And some people actually wanted to gift me. They said, I don't want anything for this. But, even with Al Schmidt, we worked out a price that was way below what he charged, but it was still like a tremendous gift. But I still gave him money in cash,
Yeah.
So there was a lot of wheeling and dealing going on.
Mm-hmm. Thanks for answering that. And I think that's a really important part of what we all do to lift each other. Especially
and bartering. Yeah.
Bartering.
You can just go back and forth. I'll do this for you and you do something for me.
Absolutely.
And that's the fair way. And
everybody wins. Everybody wins, including our audience, because you get to hear more beautiful music, more beauty, more art that might not have happened.
David Page plays on my records for free. Mm-hmm. I give him lessons for free. That's our arrangement,
Again, everybody wins. Yeah.
Just so you know, he's the keyboard player in Toto, and I just give him lessons on Latin. Don't think I taught him how to play the wonderful piano he plays. I just show him how to play montunos.
Sure, right.
But then going to your next question, though, that you asked was, and I think I actually got distracted with trying to come back to this one, but you were asking about the Spotify streams and all that and streaming. So what happened, I got to say this, the music business made a huge mistake when the Napster thing came out. They got on the wrong side of that.
They had the opportunity to buy the technology, and they were so condescending that they didn't pay attention.
They sued the guy. They should have they should have made him a VP.
That's right.
Mm-hmm. I mean, they were idiots. And and so the fact of the matter is that, we're in an unfortunate situation. I think the record companies really had a lot to do with it, because they didn't make it easy for them to sell digital downloads, so they forced it to be more pirated. But, who knows? I mean, we always made copies of our friends' records on cassette. We'd go to the store, we'd each buy a record. I'd record his, he'd record mine. If people liked it, we want people to consume the music.
Mhm.
And that's the most important thing. If people consume the music and they like consuming the music, they're going to talk about it, they're going to share about it, and they're going to, and so some people that I've come up with, I don't want to mention any names, were very hyper worried about monetizing every little thing. They didn't want anybody to have anything without payment. I have a different attitude, and I was fortunate. Have you ever heard of the Conference on World Affairs in Boulder?
No.
It's a really cool thing, and I think it may not still be strong now, but it was strong for a while. And the Gruesons were a part of it, Dave and Don, and
And Don.
there was a guy named um, Oscar Castroneves went up there,
Sure.
and I heard about it. I got to go one year with my cousin who was in Colorado, and it's a wonderful event where they have thinkers and people and panels and discussions. And I went to one on monetizing creativity, and it blew my mind because the people that are really doing well in this modern world of creativity are very happy with their stuff being shared for free.
Right.
It's
Right.
a different mindset. So with Spotify,
It's not fear-based.
no, and
It's
it's about
open-hearted.
people want. This one guy said when my first book was sent out as a PDF, I was celebrating. They said people said, "Why aren't you mad?" He goes, "No, because he became his brand. His brand grew
Mhm.
and his value grew by And so I have the same feeling. And so one of the things we're doing now in my company that we finished the 6 CDs, we're doing a lot of videos now for YouTube, and our YouTube channel is Creechy Records on
Right.
YouTube. And we're doing stories behind the scenes. In fact, Alan's going to be in some of these clips from the
Fantastic.
tribute to Jeff Porcaro that he engineered. We found clips with Jeff's kids when they were in the studio with Jim Keltner and Joe Porcaro.
Mm.
We found some incredible stuff. We found Steve Gadd and Jim Keltner, Joe Porcaro, Greg Bissonette trading licks on the drums. And we're going to put all these little things out, and we're not selling them. We're not trying to monetize. We're just going to put out these little historical things and, little mini documentaries. But I think, Terry, just back to what we're talking about streaming, the more people you get that like what you do, that consume it for free, it's going to somehow come back in revenue.
Right. Right. I'm glad to hear that. Thanks for answering that question.
And
Yes.
Spotify, at least you get a little money. I mean,
Right.
the more the better.
Yeah, it's true. And which is a great opportunity for me to ask all of you who are listening in our virtual audience and in the who are listening to the archives at your own leisure. It's free for you to go follow David Garfield on Spotify. It's free for you to go follow me, Terry Wollman, on Spotify. And guess what? If you do that, you don't get spammed. Nothing happens. It just allows us to be paid something for the music that we are doing our best to continue to create with love and joy and without compromising anything about it. So do yourselves a favor and do us one as well. It's a simple move for any artist that you want to support. And YouTube and anything else that you want to do, just to hit the subscribe button. It really makes a difference. People don't really.
Yeah, exactly.
So,
we're on a campaign to get people to subscribe and follow us on YouTube.
Yeah.
And because when we get to 1,000, when you get to 1,000 subscribers and 40 hours of listening, you can start getting monetized.
Right. And until that, they won't pay you.
Yeah.
So that's a YouTube rule that we've all learned about in this last year or so. And now we're doing our best to get our numbers up on that. But by the way, just so you know, we really appreciate it. Like, we see when those numbers go up, it's not lost on us. We appreciate it. And we thank you for that. So I want to also invite Alan, if you've got anything else to say, as well as any of our audience members or Dr. Lisa. I've got more questions, but I don't want to run out of time, and I want to include everybody. So, Lisa?
Hello, I'm looking to see if anybody else has any questions. If you do, please raise your hand or jump up and down somehow. Let me know you're out there and you have a question for David. I think it's one, it might be two. You started with no lessons. What
basically.
was it that gave you the confidence to even? My grandmother used to say sometimes you're so ignorant you don't know that you're not supposed to know, right? She said so sometimes it's a blessing because you just don't even know you're not supposed to be able to do something. But so what was it with you that caused you to go for these gigs? And then what was the transition where you said, I need to get some lessons now?
It's such a great question. When I was in St. Louis and going to high school and I was learning this jazz theory, and we went down to these clubs where they were playing and they sounded good and they were playing, and I just had the courage to let me sit in, and they let me sit in. They had an attitude, if you're got enough courage to want to sit in, we'll let you. If you fall on your face, you make a fool of yourself. And I sat in with the guys and they liked it. So that's where it
Mm-hmm.
starts. If they had said, get out of here, my confidence level would have,
Right.
I get confidence built up because of the reaction. And so when I came out to California, I came out on a Thursday night, and on Sunday night we went, I came out on a Thursday night, and Friday night we went to the Lighthouse, which is a great jazz club. A lot of great jazz records live at the Lighthouse. So I went straight there. John Clemmer was playing.
Mm-hmm.
He had Lee Ritenour on guitar. And I went up to him on the break. I said, hey, I just moved out here from St. Louis. Can I sit in? And he looked at me like, no. And it's funny because I, like you said, I was so full of myself that I didn't even know. I didn't even know how bad I was. But in LA, they didn't let you sit in. It's an interesting phenomenon. LA was very closed.
Right. Yeah.
But back in St. Louis, Chicago, these places, Cleveland, Detroit, they would let you sit in. And then if you made a fool of yourself, they'd laugh at you. But yeah. So just to answer the question, I just played. I had a friend, Carlos Vega, who came from a great music program, and we'd jam and we'd play, and I met musicians that we all jammed. Back in those days in San Fernando Valley, they had little garages that were insulated, had electricity and a carpet, and we got together and played music and jam. And then it led to starting to play at a club in Venice on the weekends, and we had a big following. So I think, Dr. Lisa, I think the key is when people smile and clap and show up and say they like listening to you, that is worth $1 million.
Mm-hmm.
Powerful.
Great question and great answer. Have you ever gone through, I'm guessing the answer is no, because your work has been really steady, but have you ever lost your confidence momentarily?
Not really. There was one night I did this gig. So I've had ups and downs with the income stream, and sometimes it's been great. Sometimes, that's the thing about being a musician. It's on and off. There's never been a steady job ever.
Right.
And no guaranteed income. So I got called. I needed the money. I got called to play for Roland Keyboards at a dinner for piano salesmen from all over the country for the NAMM show.
Mm-hmm.
Herbie Hancock was their choice, but he wasn't available or willing to do it. So I got the call.
Did Herbie recommend you or no?
I don't think so.
Okay.
I don't think so. God bless Herbie.
Yeah.
I don't know, Herbie. I've been trying to get him a copy of my Hunting Heads, my dedication to him. I don't even know if he's heard that. But anyway, so I think somebody at Roland told him, called me, and I go into the office. They want me to wear a tux and play solo piano for 4 songs for this dinner, and I needed that $1,000. That was a good paycheck back in those days for a gig. So I show up with my tux and everything, and I got my songs. I'm going to play Green Dolphins or Dolphin Dance, whatever. I'm going to play 4 different songs. And I'm waiting backstage, and they announce me, and I come out, I see, and the bright lights, and I got so scared, I just about had a panic attack.
That's interesting. It's surprising to hear you say that. I was
scared. Yeah. Well, I don't perform by myself.
Right.
Ever. Now I'm starting to actually have some success. I don't know, maybe Alan can say I played a solo song on the gig on Sunday, and it seemed that it went over pretty well. I've been doing that recently, but I never used to. And so I saw those people, and then all of a sudden the bow tie got tighter, and I was having a problem breathing. And I looked out at the lights and the people at the dinner table, and I'm going to play piano. And I'm not a solo performer. And, oh, my God, they go, David Garfield. I was about ready to collapse and
Yeah.
faint, like Tony Soprano. So I got out there, but there's something about needing that paycheck. Need
Right.
that paycheck. Breathe, start the song, try to relax. But I've been fortunate. I've had a couple of confidence knockers, but I think everybody's got something to offer in music, and
Hmm.
I think we frequently think that we're not as good as we are. We put ourselves down. Here's a great story for you. Do you remember Kenny Kirkland?
Yes, of course.
He played with Sting's band.
Hmm.
He was on Tonight Show band. He was a wonderful keyboard player out of New York. And I saw him play with David Sanborn once at the Wiltern here. He played this keyboard solo that was just a solo part of the show by himself. It was amazing. It was so wonderful. And I kept thinking, oh man, I should quit. I'm not nearly as good as him. I should give up keyboards. I go backstage and I'm talking to him at the end of the night. I said, Kenny, that keyboard solo you did was so amazing. He goes, oh man, I thought I was sucking. I was dying up there. I thought I should just quit playing music and give it up.
Isn't that something?
Wow.
Oh my God.
The perception of self.
Yes.
And I understand because I've spoken over the 5 years plus of doing the show to a lot of artists, and not just artists, but creative people in business and everything, every aspect of life. And there's something about being a creative and an artist where you are always setting the bar higher than what you can, wherever you're at, you set the bar higher. Just slightly above what you can achieve, and then you figure out how to achieve it. So it allows for an opportunity for self-doubt. And it's fascinating because everybody has moments of that. I remember sitting next to Joe Sample, late at night and working on an arrangement with him, and he was not sure if his idea was any good. Like looking at me and saying, "Hey, Terry, is this okay, or should I do this, or should I?" And I had to spin around to see if he was talking to somebody else besides me. We were the only two people in the room, but and that's when it shifted for me, David. When I said that level of doubting if it's good enough, your idea or you or your ability is an inherent part of being an artist.
That's the most amazing thing you just said, because that is the key. We creative people need people to feed back to us that what we're doing has value. Those muses or our mentors or our loved ones or, a manager or a coach, teacher, or even a student, or a fellow band member. And then when they tell us, that they loved what we played and, it's genuine, and that's so important.
Right.
And
Well,
so
that's
Joe
interesting.
needed that.
Well,
Joe
because
needed that.
You talking about just being able to sit in with these musicians and getting that applause, that validation from them was what got you started.
It sure did.
Could have taken a whole different turn if you had looked around and it was frowns and raised eyebrows and get that kid out of here.
Exactly. And now here's a story. I went with George Benson to Europe. We were at the Pori Jazz Festival in Finland. I was playing second keyboards. Barnaby Finch was playing the piano chair. And we had Clark Terry and James Moody come up and sit in with us. So George, he knew I played with Freddie Hubbard, and he had me come over and play the piano. And we played a song, and George played, and Clark Terry played. It came time for my solo, and I played a solo. And when I finished, I heard the roar of 20,000 people clapping and cheering. And that makes you, there's the thing, oh, it was okay.
Yeah.
Having those experiences,
right.
Year after year, it builds you up, and then you think you have something to offer.
Right. Yeah.
And then you hear a guy like Corey Henry. Have you heard him?
Sure.
Oh man, there's some great young talent.
Yeah.
And then you go, oh wow, and there's a thing with Greg Fillinganes is one of my favorite keyboard players, contemporary. He played Quincy Jones, Michael Jackson, all that stuff, Stevie Wonder. And he was my age, and we were contemporaries, and I would hear him play on a record, and I just loved what he did. I just, but, he validated me too when we worked together. I got the feeling that, he appreciated what I did. It meant so much to me.
It does mean a lot, to get praise from our peers, or just like a thumbs up. It doesn't take much. A smile.
Yeah. Here's a great
Woohoo!
one.
That's yeah.
Here's a great one. We were playing at this thing in Cleveland honoring Tommy LaPuma
Mhm.
and Horace Silver, and I was playing with George. We played This Masquerade. Dr. John was there. I love Dr. John. I was talking to him afterwards, and I go, "Man, you're so great." Blah 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 blah. I was just trying to play This Masquerade, and Dr. John said, I heard you do your thing on This Masquerade. I heard some voices in there." And I was like, "Oh, you were listening to me? Oh my
Right.
God."
And
And he approved.
that's the shit right there. I mean, those kind of, you walk away from something like that, and you take it to the end of your life. Those moments where the people that you respect you back. Those moments of validation are pretty wonderful. They're pretty wonderful.
Yeah. And I have to say, I got that from Smokey. God bless him. We were doing something in the studio, and I kept saying, "Well, you could put the solo here, and you could get who." And he says, "I want you to solo." I said, "Well, and he says, "But you're David." I was like, "Oh my God." Okay, I'll take it, Smokey.
That is great that he said that to you, and that you received it, because you are David. You are, man. You have brought, and you continue to bring so much to everything that you do, and to this magnificent music through as long as I've known you, which has been a really long time, and before then.
Well, we're probably due to do some more music together.
Yeah, we are well overdue. I would love to do that. Let's just do it. I'm working on things, and so are you. So I'll barter with you. It's like, let's support each other. Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Thank you I would love to do that. We are running out of time. So before I get to my closing questions, I wanted to ask you really quickly, because we were talking about aging and health and everything. And you practice yoga and Pilates as a way to keep fit mentally, spiritually, energetically. You meditate. Can you just speak about that for a moment?
Well, yeah, the most important thing, especially as a performer playing music, is to breathe and be in the moment and not, get too much in your head. And breathing is such a key, and the other thing is, even in the studio as a producer or any business situations, it can be challenging sometimes to listen to people disagree with you,
Mm-hmm.
have opposing viewpoints, and if they cut you off and so forth. So, I think, for me, yoga was great to get me into breathing, and meditating is something I wish I did more of, but it quiets the mind
Mm-hmm.
and it allows you to be in the moment. I think the key is to be in the moment, and we have to do that as musicians: listen, look, pay attention, react. Um, and the other thing I wanted to just throw in, as you were talking about, just closing what we've talked about making it in music, was the great thing that my friend Carlos Vega said: there's arts and there's crafts.
Mm-hmm.
He always said that to me. And we can use our skills in music as a craft, and we can also use it to make art. And it's great to separate it. And when you're working for somebody doing craft, you have to remember to not make it your art show, because they might want it different. Do the craft, arts and crafts.
Right. And serve the music, serve the song, serve the artist, serve the moment.
And then when you're at the baked potato with your own gig, then you can do it your way.
Right. Absolutely. My closing questions, and Lisa, of course, interject if you have any more questions or if anybody else does. But I ask all of my guests this. I've got 3 closing questions, and you've been speaking to this the whole show. Since this show's called Making It, what does making it mean to you, both personally and professionally?
It means being able to do what you do creatively and have someone enjoy consuming it and enjoy the product, the result.
Mm-hmm. And that speaks to both personally and professionally? What about personally?
personally, it means that people enjoy and appreciate what you bring as a person.
Hmm.
And what Alan said earlier really hit home. I appreciate what he said because it made me feel that I've been successful in that. Although we can't be 100% successful, but it's about making it as a person is that people, when you leave them, they feel somewhat lifted up, somewhat better for having interacted with you.
Mm-hmm.
That would be making it.
Yeah. I appreciate that too, Alan, of all the things that you could have said about David, because you know him better than most people. And you've been producing music with him for years and engineering and partners and creative partners, business partners, that would be something that you really focused on, that was one of the things that was the forefront for your description of your friend. You kind of set the tone for this conversation, Alan. So thank you for that. My second question. Oh, go ahead, Alan.
Well, I just no, you're welcome. I mean, it's like I said, uh, it was the first thing that came to mind,
Yeah.
and I think that's the most important, And I've just, David gave me tremendous opportunities. And he's talking about all those heroes that he, got to work with, but he invited me into that world. And I don't know that would have happened had we not, met
Mm-hmm.
David was the keyboard player in Brandon Fields' band, and that's how we met. And became fast friends from then on. And he just, you talk about doubt. I had a tremendous amount of doubt about my skills and my abilities and stuff, and he just, he never once, doubted. And he gave me the confidence to do that. And like I say, to work with, I'd have to pinch myself every once in a while and go, boy, look what I get to do. Look at the music that we get to make together.
Alan got to show
It's
videos of him working with Eddie Van Halen to his daughter.
Oh, that's
Yeah.
great.
Yeah, and I started working my way out of the music business when she was quite young, so it's the old joke about she had no idea until we showed her that one, and it just blew her mind.
Yeah, I can imagine.
And Terry,
great.
you've said it so well that this is actually what's come out of this hour together is we value each other and we lift each other up and we hear each other's music. We say, I like that music. And it makes us want to makes us feel good about making it, makes us want to make more of it.
Right.
Oh, there's
Yeah.
another twist on making it.
That's
Making
for
music.
sure. Yes.
Making it.
Absolutely. My second question of the three is, can you share 3 tips for success that have driven your career?
Well, listen, be a good listener. Then I've learned these not necessarily from doing them, but from not doing them. Show up 15 minutes early
Mm-hmm.
instead of 15 minutes late, which is what I did. And prepare. Preparing is the best thing. And I never was prepared. I learned to prepare, and it's a joy to prepare for something. We prepared for this today, and it made it so fun.
Right.
And so, yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
Listen,
and as a matter of fact,
be early and prepare.
Those are 3 fantastic tips. And I have to thank you and give you compliments because you prepared as much as I did for this conversation. You gave me so much to work with that this is one of the easiest interviews that I've done in the 5 years that I've done. And not just because we know each other, but because you prepared as well. And I didn't even realize it, except I remember just telling my wife, Melanie, I said, this is going to be fun because David gave me so much great stuff to work with. So much information, personal stories, things in addition to what I already knew. So thank you for that as well. And I prepare for these conversations like I would prepare for a concert in the same way. At my final question to you, and then I'll give you closing words. At this point of your life, with everything that you know to be true, what would you tell your younger self if you could?
Buy Apple stock.
or Starbucks. Right?
Gosh, it's an interesting question, Terry, because I've often felt that I know I have so much wisdom now that I didn't have when I was young, but I don't know, that we can connect those two worlds. But if there's anything I would have done, I mean, and I hate to even say this, but if there's anything I would have done, if I could have done, um, you know, yeah, it's hard to say. I mean, all these things that we talk about, that you learn, be early, prepare, listen. I think, yeah, I mean, that's such an interesting conundrum. I guess the one thing, in all seriousness, if I would tell myself is try to be a little bit more sympathetic and tolerant and not so sarcastic, because that was one of the things when we were younger, the pack of guys I ran with, we were very sarcastic.
Yeah.
And that was the way that we kind of interacted. We put people's music down. We go in to do a session, and then we would make fun of the guy's music, and like it was never necessarily something I thought of doing or wanted to do. But our gang did it, and I guess there's the message. Don't go with the gang mentality. There you go. Go with your conscious and your inspiration from your higher self, and don't be a gang member. There you go.
Mm-hmm. That's great. That's great advice. On that note, any closing words, any closing thoughts, anything on your heart or mind that you want people to know about you, or just what's important to you?
Yeah, I mean, I think music really is magic, and I think I've seen people love it all over the world. Everybody loves music. It brings people together. I really wish we could have more of a government-sponsored music program that we valued it as much as other things, because I see that it brings people together, and I see that it creates joy. And it's been my privilege to spend my whole life making music and making people happy and watching them smile and clap, and signing autographs and all that. But I just value music, and I'm going to try to spread that as much as I can. And everybody that's here, please spread that. And Terry, we've been privileged to be in a magic time in LA with magic people, like we mentioned, Joe Sample and Al Schmidt.
Yeah.
It's a special time. Like there was a time in France where they had Van Gogh, and they had Monet and a bunch of Picasso. They were all hanging out. Yeah, and then that's what we've been in LA in this era of the recording studio. Because
you're so right. Yep.
There's been a lot of magic. We came in after the Beach Boys and the Wrecking Crew, and we did this thing, and now it's changed, and then we're in a digital world. And what we've done, I feel, will live on forever, and that's why I'm so happy to spend all my money making these CDs so everybody can listen to them on Spotify or Apple Music.
The album is called Stretchin Outside The Box, David Garfield. David, it's so fantastic to spend this time together, and this is show and tell you're holding up for anybody who's watching the video.
Hold it up higher.
Hold it up higher, Dr. Lisa. Hold it up again, please, David.
I was looking in the wrong screen. It's a double.
Awesome. Yeah, it is.
But Terry, I'm so glad you called me. I've had such a great time, and I look forward to doing more music with you and coming back on this again too.
You're always welcome. And Dr. Lisa, thank you so much for always being such a beautiful moderator, and your questions are.
This has been a joy. David's mission statement says, "I make music." And then during this talk, he said, "Music is magic." So David, you also make magic.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Lisa. And what I was saying is your questions are always impeccable. Alan Hirschberg, thank you for joining the conversation. And I believe you might have been the one who introduced me to David and I, like so many 35, 40 years ago, however long it's been. And I thank you for that. David, it's just such a pleasure to see you again. And I look forward to making music with you. Thank you. And to our live audience here, our virtual audience, and to everybody out there in the world. All of you who are listening, we appreciate you so much. So stay safe and stay inspired. And we'll see you all next week. Thank you so much. Thanks,
Thank you.
David.
Tune in again next week for another great episode of Making It with Terry Wollman.